What is up, guys? Rick Smackus here. Thank you so much for stopping by, and today we're going to be taking the brand new Season of Dawn exotic, the Symmetry Scout Rifle, through the entirety of the new Garden of Salvation raid. It isn't just going to be me using it either. All 6 of us are utilizing this new exotic in every single encounter, and we're going to be ranking its performance in every single encounter. Is this new exotic any good? Well, we put it through the ringer to find out, and so let's get started. Now, first things first, let's take a look at this brand new exotic weapon because it does have a few unique perks. Firstly, it has the intrinsic perk Revolution. This weapon fires full auto. Hold reload to swap to Arc Seeker mode. Arc Seekers track towards enemies you target. Then it's got another perk, Dynamic Charge. Precision hits build up Dynamic Charge. Swapping to Arc Seeker mode increases damage and partially reloads the magazine based on the number of charges. So, essentially how this weapon works is as such. Normally, it's a 260 rounds per minute, aka a rapid fire frame scout rifle, full auto, 20 rounds in the magazine, so pretty easy to use as a baseline. Like if this was a legendary gun and it just had those traits, it would be decent. But of course, it isn't. So what it can do is, as you get more and more precision hits, you're going to build up that dynamic charge, and you're going to see it in the corner of your screen go up from ×1 to a max of ×15. And then if you hold reload, you switch over to the Arc Seeker mode, and the more dynamic charge times you have before you do so, the more damage it does. Now that sounds very cool, but how does it actually perform? Well, in the very first encounter of this raid, which has you killing quite a lot of adds, well, it's actually quite decent. When you do get that high charge and switch to Arc Seeker, the Arc Seekers are capable of one-shotting a lot of the red bar enemies, like you can one-shot goblins at ×15, and there is a little bit of an arc explosion. There's a little bit of area of effect damage, and that means that a couple of shots that will kill one goblin will kill the goblin beside it as well. So that is definitely very good for crowd control. Also, specifically in this encounter, there's a lot of Cyclopses. And the thing is, it's actually quite easy to get up your dynamic charge when you are just laying into those Cyclopses in the normal firing mode. You're not necessarily trying to kill them with this weapon, you're purposely building up your dynamic charge, saving it for when there's a bunch of adds and you can just mow through them. However, although the Arc Seeker mode is very good against the more low-level adds, against like yellow bar minotaurs, it's actually not that great. It doesn't kill them as fast as you want. It's great when it kills in 1 or 2 shots, but as soon as it takes quite a few, because the fire rate is slowed down substantially in Arc Seeker mode, it can cause a little bit of trouble. So that is definitely the main downside. However, I was still generally impressed by the symmetry in this first encounter, and therefore I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 in this encounter. Certainly above average, however, the poor performance against yellow bars did hamper it because there's quite a few in this encounter. However, it is time to move on to the second encounter of Garden of Salvation, and this has you seemingly play towards the strong suits of the symmetry because you are just defending a conflux from waves and waves and waves of enemies. And by the way, if we're using some weird tactics in the background, that's because this encounter has the challenge mode active for the week we did it, which requires you to hook up all 6 of your fireteam members at the same time. And of course, we thought, well, we're already here, might as well do the challenge mode as we're testing this janky weapon. I don't know why we're that insane, but regardless, this weapon here did seem to perform better. Now, there is certainly some powerful enemies when when you're initially getting those confluxes online. You have some angelics, you do have some champion enemies as well, and yeah, this thing against a champion is just not going to work out whatsoever. You will need to switch to a special or heavy weapon, but it's just a primary, and that same statement can be true for most other primaries out there. However, once you do set up the confluxes and it's just waves of ads where the biggest, baddest thing is simply a Minotaur, it is pretty darn decent. The one slight downside it does have is against a bunch of Vex that are walking at you, it can be kind of difficult to get that dynamic charge really high up there. Like, it is kind of hard to hit multiple precision shots on a bunch of Vex because they got the weird precision spot in their stomachs. Usually you can do so pretty easily on a goblin, but by the time you get like 2 or 3 shots off on the goblin, it's already dead and you're switching to the next guy. And often if you do miss or you end up reloading or something, the goblins will actually crunch up and hide their precision spots. You can't even get it anymore. So that can be kind of annoying. You kind of wish for the days of Hive where it was just a knight with a big old head and you could just ramp up all those stacks. So here that does kind of hamper it a bit, but that is more of a minor complaint. It's pretty easy to just mow through one wave of spawning enemies, switch to the more powerful mode, and mow down the second wave a lot easier. However, there will be some more things that happen during this encounter. Firstly, 3 different angelic enemies are going to spawn at whatever conflicts you're at, and you are gonna have to, again, switch weapons. Yeah, you can build up the stacks on one and then switch over to the other, but it really doesn't do that much damage to the angelics, even with like times 15. And because the bullets are so slow shooting, it really doesn't work well with the rotating shields of the Hydras. Regardless, you're eventually going to have to go to the middle of the arena and fight a lot more Angelics, and again, although you can like just beam them with this scout rifle and kill them in a reasonable amount of time, you're probably still going to want to switch to heavies and specials and so on. Against the other ads pressuring you, it's not that bad, especially if you do switch to that Arc Seeker mode with a high bonus, because they do definitely spawn in groups and it can be very easy to take them out. But overall in this encounter, it's kind of the same benefits and the downsides as the first encounter. Very good against clearing out the ads, but not so good against the higher level enemies. There is definitely more low level ads in this encounter, however, so here I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Definitely above average, a decent weapon to use. Just be aware you're gonna have to switch off of it for the angelics and so on. However, it is time to move on to the third encounter, and here we've got a boss fight. We have a big boss damage phase, and this is gonna be where this gun either shines or sucks, because it is capable of doing a lot of damage, especially if you get that times 15 bonus. It is chunking enemy as well. All 6 people with this gun, all having times 15 bonuses. How much damage can it actually do? Well, you're gonna have to get to the damage phase first, and for that I was on eyes duties and it was pretty decent. You kill the little things that you have to shoot pretty fast, like definitely not as fast as something like the Recluse, but it certainly wasn't putting us in danger utilizing this weapon, and I heard no complaints really from the people defending the confluxes. Again, against normal ads, it's great. But moving on from there to the actual damage phase. So this entire encounter, we are just using it like a normal scout rifle in order to build up times 15 specifically for the damage phase, so we can do as much damage as we could. And by the way, when you're just utilizing it as a normal scout, it does feel totally fine. Again, it's like a really good legendary Black Scorpion essentially, which is kind of the same archetype. But for that damage phase, set up Weapons of Light and switch to the high damage mode at times 15, and oh no! This thing does absolutely no damage. No damage! And interestingly, you can see with weapons and in the well, it's not getting yellow numbers, aka it's not getting any sort of precision damage. It's kind of like the Xenophage when it came out, where it's just an explosive damage and it doesn't get precision, so it really doesn't benefit from a lot of the damage bonuses out there. And so we did just like no damage to this boss. It was pathetic, and therefore in this third encounter, I'm gonna have to give this weapon a 4 out of 10. It is undoubtedly below average because of those poor damage numbers. Now you may be thinking, well, why don't you just use it in the normal mode? But if you do, and you can see I did a bit in another damage phase, it is literally just like using a legendary Black Scorpion or utilizing the Randys. It's not doing anything out of the ordinary compared to a normal legendary rapid fire frame scout rifle. So just no reason to use it in the normal mode. The whole reason this thing is exotic is that alternate fire mode doing more damage, etc. But that is not all. We have another section of this raid, and this one is against the final raid boss. Yet again, we have another big bad damage phase. Will this thing suck just as hard as it just did? Or this boss, it does have a very weird critical spot, and this is a very weird weapon. Who knows, maybe it'll shine. So, in the final encounter, of course, you have to get, again, to that boss fight, and for this part, this weapon is fine. In fact, more than fine. Enemies are spawning out in kind of the middle of the map. Having a very accurate scout rifle is kind of exactly what you want. Like, normally it's the recluse, and then you kind of gotta either put yourself in danger by going closer to the enemies, or do very little damage from the back of the map, or more likely a combination of like waiting for them to get a little bit closer and pushing up. But with this, you can just pick them all off as soon as they spawn. It is actually very good for that. And if you're ever getting a little bit overwhelmed, oh no, there's multiple enemies around a conflict they're kind of sacrificing, switch to that alternate fire mode and kill them in absolutely no time. When you're traveling to the other areas as well to collect the motes, this is pretty good too, especially if you're going to that other area with times 15 or times 10 or whatever with a high charge, and then you can just switch to the alternate fire mode, and pretty much the entire time you're on that separate area, you can just mow through all the ads, because they are going to be all low level ads. They totally group up, perfect for this weapon. But, of course, then there's the damage phase. So, we set it up, went to damaging him, and as you can see, yeah, it sucks. So, first off, as he's moving around, the tracking can cause you to get a lot of immunes. Like, you gotta be hitting perfectly in his crit at the center of his stomach. Once he's up there, though, you can start hitting it, but it's only like 11,000 damage per shot. To put that into perspective, if you're using the Izanagi's Burden, it's 200,000 damage per shot, or around there. So it is just colossally so much more damage using a sniper rifle than utilizing this weapon. And as you can see, I mean, at the end we did 1/6 of his health around, so just not good damage. Unfortunately, it's just the fact that although you are massively increasing the damage with this thing's exotic perk, the weirdness around it and the fact that it doesn't actually count as a precision shot because it's kind of an explosive projectile and it doesn't really have an impact damage, just a blast radius, it is causing this weapon to do very low damages against those high power enemies, against bosses like this, despite how much damage it does against, again, other Guardians in the Crucible and the red bar enemies. However, in this encounter, there's certainly more of an emphasis in killing red bar enemies. In fact, there's a requirement in killing red bar enemies in comparison with the last encounter. So even though it absolutely sucks on the boss, I could see you running, for example, a Supremacy Sniper Rifle, which is actually very good for DPS, and then this to clear out ads, and then just use other weapons for that damage phase. So here, I am going to give it a 5 out of 10. Perfectly average. And if you're wondering, okay, well, what does this get overall? I think it has to be a 6.5 out of 10. It is good in the encounters when you're just clearing out ads, but it drops down significantly the more big enemies are around, and bosses are absolutely the worst with this thing. So, That's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, found this interesting. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickKackis. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.